Hello, my beautiful fellow wild dreamers, sparkly space blobs, and creative, sensitive spirits. I am so glad that you are here with me. It takes so much courage to continue to show up in this version of the world and continue to choose to light your internal lantern and be guided by your heart and to feel deeply and to be curious and to keep an open heart to what beauty could come next. That takes so much courage and determination and presence. And I am so appreciative of these moments that we get to share here together. And just a reminder that I'm always here to create spaces of nervous system regulation, centeredness, calm, empowerment, magic. I think we need those spaces. And that definitely doesn't mean I'm not feeling the waves and the emotions coming through as these wounds of culture and society are showing themselves in such huge, huge, huge ways right now that affect real people in their lives. I'm feeling all of that. But we always come to this space to have a moment to gather around, to center, to be really clear with the way we want to treat ourselves and therefore how we move in the world, how our energy moves in the world. And we're talking about a new moon that I think is so important in the kind of architecture of this year. It has been a really, really profound year. We have been working with huge waves of shifting energy. And we've also been navigating kind of culture heading into this point of asking questions about what is this going to look like? How do we want to steer this ship? How do we want to guide this experiment of being alive here? And the Cancer new moon brings in an element of energy that is really lacking in the leadership and structures that we see, but is extremely potent and powerful and has been here the whole time. It's been here the whole time. It's been weaving and creating and holding communities together for thousands of years, but it's not always the one that you see on the news or that you see in the big blaring headlines. It's a process of weaving and creating that happens in the intimacy of friendships at home, in our private spaces, in our communal spaces, in places where we are connecting. It also happens in the emotive front and in the intuitive front and the energetic. And this Cancer new moon is going to light all of that up. But if there's one thing I would say about this new moon, it's a very flowing new moon. It's conjunct Jupiter, which is newly in Cancer, and it's very much this point of light and warmth and clarity and prayer and connection. And it's all about coming home to our essence. It's not always about striving to get to be somebody else. This new moon is an invitation to come back home to our essence and to move from there, and how much magic is really involved in doing that. And this is one of those things that sounds so simple, maybe a little too simple. You might be thinking, Sarah, come on now. We need a little bit more to get us through than just coming back to our essence. But the more you allow this process to happen, and I've been playing around with this in the last just few weeks, and it has changed everything for me energetically, in the way I see things, the way I'm connecting to like difficult family members, the way that I'm able to engage has changed radically. So I hope in this chat today, as we move through this Cancer new moon, you feel some of this magic and give yourself the permission to play with this. That's what we do here in this space. So let us get into the Cancer new moon coming about on June 25th. I always love to come back to the basics and just really center in on the archetype. So we're going to explore Cancer just for a moment, because I think this is one of those archetypes that's really interesting. In the kind of pop astrology cultural lens, Cancer often gets stereotyped as very emotional, unstable, clingy, needy, nostalgic. and so ruled by emotion that there's no consistency and there's no, how can you even trust that energy? And I think that's really, really interesting because it very efficiently undercuts the extreme power of this sign. And if you are a Cancer, I love you so much. I'm married to one and it's amazing. I have Venus in Cancer too. So I just this is an energy that is just very innate to me and just is so important and powerful. And I think it's very interesting that this type of energy has been so maligned and kind of people are so uncomfortable with it. Because I think everybody here in this space, we know how important this is. We know how important being in touch with emotions, being in touch with energies, being able to connect with all of the energy behind the scenes is. We know that that leads to better communion with our lives, that it leads to deeper solutions, that it leads to caring, that it leads to creativity at a whole new level. So we are in on that secret because, Cancer is ruled by the moon. It's connected to the symbolism of the crab, of the sea mother, and it's the tides and the movement of the cyclical nature of our natural world and the waters. Cancer is both mother and unconscious. Cancer is both home and the deep process of psychic rebirth in the waters. And we often think about rebirth and renewal through the lens of the other water sign of Scorpio. But I think that Cancer is one of those places where we do some of the deepest redefinition of ourselves through our inner mothering and through our ability to safely tap into the unconscious regularly. And so often this fourth sign, it's connected to home, the domestic, the non-public facing part of ourselves. This is not about the performative external shell. Cancer is about what happens when we are at home with ourselves, when we sit down in the quiet, who is there? When we take off the costumes of the external performance, who is there? And I think so often Cancer gets put in the position that is really based on the patriarchal perspective of things, which is that it's all about just this tame, domestic, emotional process of just sitting at home and everything's so nice. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with wanting to have security, home, comfort. I mean, those are parts of Cancer, right? There's nothing wrong with wanting and needing those things. I am such a homebody. I love it. It's the best thing in the world. It's my favorite place to be. But it's so much more than that. I think those of us who spend a lot of time at home through having to or needing to for some reason or just wanting to know a lot of interesting things happen in this realm because this is a highly responsive energetic modality of the psychic gifts of being able to transition between conscious and unconscious and to mother ourselves deeply. And when we don't have access to this energy, this private domain of deep diving, intuition dries up, culture dries up, connection dries up, community dries up. It's like this isolation from ourselves. Life dries up, the well dries up because we feel too overwhelmed, we feel too pushed out in the external constantly. And so when we're coming here into this Cancer new moon, the sun and moon meeting here, and this is the moon's home sign, it's a real invitation to remember the power of this energy, the power of coming home to ourselves, the power of emotionally feeling fully, the power of allowing unconscious elements to rise and connect and be the well through which we do our next creative visioning. This is a very creative new moon. A lot of new ideas are going to be springing forth seemingly out of nowhere. And yet these are ideas and connection points that have been with you this whole time because they have been so innate to you. And that actually leads me to the next theme. And this is kind of the central, most important theme that we have going for this new moon, which is that this new moon is happening right after Jupiter moves into Cancer for the first time in about 12, 13 years. And this is our first new moon with Jupiter in Cancer. For the next year, we're going to have this energy that we're working with. And so this is a really beautiful moment, and they're all meeting here. Sun, Moon, and Jupiter are very close together in Cancer. And this is a very powerful invitation. This is a very powerful new moon because Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. The moon is at home in Cancer. So we are working with energies that are very much flowing at this time. And this brings me to the main theme. You know, with Jupiter, there is this sense that it's about expansion, right? That's always what we hear. Jupiter is about expansion. I have a whole chat about Jupiter and Cancer, by the way, if you want to deep dive into that topic and kind of what I'm seeing there for this energetic combo. But sometimes expansion isn't about this like outward, upward mobility kind of thing that, you know, consumer culture thinks about when we're talking about expansion. In Cancer, one of the things it's going to be doing is asking us to really connect to our home address, our essence, and to expand our gifts there. So we are coming home, you know, rather than trying to spend all of our energy out there, we're going to start by going into the unconscious, going into those waters, going into our self-mothering, and from there moving. And what's interesting is initially you're going to think, well, I don't want to just sit at home and be with myself and just get back to my essence. Look at all the things going on in the world. I need to be moving. I need to be making things. But here's the thing. When we do this kind of expansion that seemingly counterintuitively is going in and down below, we are moving energy much better, in a much more consistent way than if we were to just focus on the external expansion alone. It is extremely powerful. And that's where this idea of coming into our essence is so important, because these are the ingredients and the ways of seeing and moving and doing that are essential to you. They are so essential, in fact, that a lot of times you can't even see them because they feel so boring, so mundane. They are the places where, you know, you get tired in your day, or where something kind of rubs you in an interesting way and you're like, I don't know about that. Or where you find interest and it sparks up a light, and where you don't find interest and you just say, meh. It shows up in all of your mundane routines. It shows up in the places where you feel like you always hit a certain wall. I know for me, I was doing the wild dreaming practices over on my Patreon. If you want to join me for Wild Dreaming at the Crossroads, by the way, I really highly recommend joining me there. We are working with exiles all of June. And I was working with my exiles during that journey. And I realized all of these intuitive gifts that I've had since I was born. I mean, they just are me. I had suppressed because they weren't convenient to the adults around me, because everybody told me that's not real, just get it together, why are you making up that stuff? I pushed it all down, not all of it. A lot of it still escaped because it's my essence, it's who I am. Here I am sitting here doing an astrology and tarot YouTube channel, so clearly some things still made it through. But some of the ways that I'm able to like see and hear and listen for messages from the energetic world, I pushed down. And I didn't even know I had done it. And I didn't even realize that I had been editing them out. Every single day, at some level, my brain was having to actively talk me out of this essence. So whatever that essence is for you, it might just be something as simple as a preference that just doesn't feel allowed because everybody says you should be highly social all the time, or you should always wear this kind of clothing or that kind of clothing, or whatever it is. I don't even know. Like, it's hard to even put words to this idea of coming home to your essence and focusing on expanding your ability to notice, see, and witness this essence, because it's so innate to you that, like I said, it might feel like it goes unnoticed or like you can't even quite see it. But if you just take a moment to just think about the last few weeks and what were some of the things that as you moved through your day, who are you? What are your preferences? Where do you get tired? Where do you get interested? Where do you get like a little like intuitive nudge that tells you something, but maybe you let yourself listen or not? And this is just a really interesting place to explore yourself. And that's where I say too that this new moon is going to be all about ideas and connection points springing seemingly out of nowhere. Like ideas that you haven't been building up the last 6 months. I know we've been getting a lot of these like new waves of energy, and it's like, whoa, meeting myself again. This is surprising. This is interesting. And so we've been talking about this a lot, but sometimes, we will get ideas and inspiration and culminating knowledge from a place that's so deep within us that it feels really, really natural and in flow. There's no, oh, I will strive to one day become this person. I'm going to like do my, visualizations and my mood board and all of that. And I'm going to strive to be this person over there, down the hill, over the valley, through the valley, over the mountains. And I will finally make it over to that person over there. No, these ideas are coming from who you already have been this whole time. Your eternal self, your true essence. And this is where the best ideas come from, which is why I'm saying that there is a very clear for me agenda when this kind of Cancerian, home-based, moon-based, unconscious, deep mothering-based energy gets put on the back burner or gets belittled, because this is where culture and self change. This is where interesting things culminate, and this is where intuition comes to life and helps navigate us in ways that are true to us, from our home address, from our true essence. And we're going to be doing a practice over on Patreon all about landing in this deep mothering energy that allows our essence to speak and to show itself to us. So I highly recommend joining me for that. This is also a beautiful new moon to just call on the great weaving mother energy and let it land in your body, and calling this great mother to heal, protect, and help us be wily and wise as we move through life, navigating the way, finding each other, lighting the internal lantern, calling on healing for the world in the fiercest, most powerful way, for the greater, wiser leadership to come forth, for the great waters to wash away what is not serving, and who is not prepared to hold the space of great mother weaving and is not ready to truly nurture the world into its next form. Let that be washed away so that we can see and lead and come into a season of greater maturity and depth. Because there is a maturing process that goes on in working with Cancerian energy, an emotional maturing and adaptability that is very, very potent and so important. And if you haven't worked with Cancerian energy very much, this is a great year to kind of explore your relationship to it and how you connect to it. I have one final little theme I wanted to just bring in here very briefly, which is that Mars is now in Virgo and it will be sextiling this new moon and Jupiter. And what a little interesting check-in with Mars, because Mars kind of went through a bit of an energetic realignment this year through the big retrograde it did over the course of right around New Year's and the first month or two of this year. We were working with Mars retrograde in Leo and Cancer, of all things. And now Mars has finally moved on into Virgo for the first time in quite a while. And this is really interesting for me because, Mars is so much about our true motivations. Like what just like that life force energy just wants to make things happen. That's ready to like kind of move through difficulty and adversity and move toward things. However, so often Mars gets co-opted by culture to be about like pushing ourselves and, trying to become that other version of ourselves and like having these externally oriented goals that just kind of suck our soul away slowly but surely and like shut down our psychic abilities, and we can weaponize Mars against ourselves. And many of us have been trained to do just that. But I think now, after this Mars rebirth that's been going on, and now here with this sextile, Mars in Virgo is going to be a lot about connecting with our whole self, with our integrity, with our total completeness. And in this sign, I think one of the challenges and the invitations is that perfectionism, always striving to do more and to like over obsess, isn't going to work. This new moon moment here in general is, do I need to always play mental games with myself to force things through and to make life happen? And if I do feel like I have to do mental games to make life happen and force myself through, is it working? And where can I maybe experiment and let myself have moments where I'm not trying to force action through? Maybe I can trust my essence a little bit more. Maybe I can trust my intuition and my body and the ways that we may want to move forward. When you dream of something, of doing something, of creating something, does it feel innate to you? Like something that you love? And even if it isn't something that you're famous at or good at or, making a whole bunch of money at, what are the things that just feel innate? You don't need to describe it. You don't need to defend it. You don't need to make yourself do anything with it. It just comes naturally. Once again, this whole new moon is about flow. It's about the places that are flowing. And so often we feel like we need to make it more complicated. It needs to be harder. It needs to be scarier. It needs to feel worse. We need to go through the hell of torturing ourselves first before we're ever allowed to feel okay in ourselves, before we're ever allowed to feel peace with our essence or our preferences. And this is an invitation to question those hellscapes we put ourselves through. And so many of us are taught that that's valorous, that that's what makes something valid. And this year with Jupiter and Cancer is really going to challenge that as the mental way we have to frame everything. Things can still be hard. Things can still take courage. They can still take resilience. They can still require us to like show up even when our heart is pounding. And life can still be very difficult in this current environment. But adding on that second arrow, it's called the second arrow in Buddhist teachings, where you are stressed about something and then you feel stress about the stress. When you are scared of something and then you feel the fear about it's that second layer, and questioning that and questioning why we treat ourselves like that. This is what this new moon is inviting us into. I'm really curious to see how it feels. I'm so intrigued about, how this new moon is going to feel, how it's going to feel moving through Jupiter in Cancer this coming year. It's a very beautiful placement, and it really is quite countercultural to kind of like what we're seeing on the more internet side of things, on some of these larger cultural things that are so full of like strife and noise and nervous system activation. It really is coming from such a different space, and it's one that is really, really legitimate. And I want to like express that deeply, because sometimes in the kind of conscientious progressive world, it can be very taboo to say it's okay to want to have peace in your body. It's okay to want to self-mother and come from a sustainable place. It's okay to want to dream of something beautiful and kind. Like, it's okay to do that. It's okay to take a step back when you need to, when there are, just voices yelling all the time at how bad you need to be feeling in order for things to get done. Man, that modality is just really destructive. It just burns us out. And it's a real invitation to seeing what miracles and love we can pull into the world from a place of really, really anchored centeredness. And this is not just like, oh, love and light. No. This is some real badassery. Okay, this takes like courage, it takes curiosity. It is about really taking the time to develop that capital S self and care for our exiles and for the parts of ourselves that have been burdened and exhausted. It is a courageous and powerful thing to do to choose this. And I am so proud of all of us because I know so many of us are doing that work right now and are finding the courage and bravery to go to those places and ask those questions. And like I'm preaching to the choir anytime I'm talking about stuff. I'm like, I know you know. I know you already know. I know you're already doing this, but it's so helpful, I think, sometimes just put words to it and to share in it together. How are you feeling? I've been shuffling my cards while I've been chatting here. High Priestess arrived, which couldn't be more perfect for this new moon, this very watery, wise, initiating new moon into our Jupiterian year of beauty and intuition and essence. High Priestess is deeply intuitive. Creation happens from the great waters of the unconscious into life. She's the counterpart to the magician, who we often think of as, oh yeah, I'm going to be this master creator channeling stuff. The High Priestess channels. And initially that feels very subtle, very soft, very esoteric in that hidden behind the veil kind of energy. It's very powerful though. It weaves things differently. And it does change the external world, but it's not that immediacy, the immediacy of and Ten of Pentacles. Okay. The immediacy of, checking your email and answering an email and saying, I've taken action. I mean, that's a modality. It's allowed to exist as a modality, but this is a different energy. This is, I'm taking an hour to center, then move. I'm taking 5 minutes to get quiet and be with myself and then move. I'm listening in to intuitive guidance and then moving. Things work differently. And it takes a little while, I think, to build the trust that it will move and it will change when we really earnestly show up to this. But we are getting initiated into a different way of thinking about our existence, our souls, our essence, and how we're moving. And the High Priestess always tells us about that initiation. And then the Ten of Pentacles. This card has been showing up in general quite a bit recently, which I think is really interesting. Of course, tens in tarot are the completion of a cycle. And I do think in general that many of us are feeling this, like we have hit into this massive questioning point where a cycle is doing its completion. And we have a lot of questions about what everything looks like next. And there are a couple of things that I always say when the Ten of Pentacles shows up. One is that this is an invitation to see the magic in the mundane. In this card, we see a group of people who they have their house, they have everything set up, and they no longer notice the magic. There is a hermit-like figure waiting outside of this gate. There are these dogs trying to initiate intuition, but the people are so concerned with, the argument they're having and what they don't have that they can't notice the invitation into the intuitive magic. Now, of course, we're going to have a lot of people that are going to stay in that mode right now, and I have days where honestly, even me will resist my intuition and the magic of everything waiting for me in the mundane. But this is that invitation. It is that invitation to work from that modality and to tear our eyes away from some of the things that we're taught to obsess over and start looking around at those different ingredients. That's where we're going to start building from. The other side of this is the slow build. Ten of Pentacles is the slow build, brick by brick. Intentionally adding bricks. And what's important, I think, in both of these cards showing up is that it's not just about building just any old thing just to build it and to feel like we're worthy of existing here. It's like practicing coming back to our home address of peace, of belonging, of our soul essence, whatever those gifts and visions are, and then building. And I think I'm going to be learning this lesson over and over again. When I try and do work and from a place that's not my home address, I'm going to be feeling the effects of that. And when I do movement and I create something from my home address, from my true essence, it's going to flow. And I think that is the experimentation. And in fact, like, I think I will just experiment with that in the coming days. And like I said, I'm going to be doing a beautiful visualization practice, art practice for this Cancer new moon over on my Patreon. We are going to just be welcoming in the great weaving mother energy to hold us and to allow that to let us connect to that essence and see what's wanting to come and build and move through and to feel really, really safe and landed. And we are already on our journey of wild dreaming at the crossroads. We are working right now with exiles, and we are connecting to these essential components that are so, so powerful. The first segment of Wild Dreaming at the Crossroads, which is every Friday of June, we are working with exiles. And this is where a lot of our home essence is living. So if you want help getting back to your home essence, I highly recommend checking out my Patreon. We have so much more. We're Wild Dreaming at the Crossroads all of June, July, and August, which is my creation. Wild Dreaming is all about surrealist art practices, visualizations, dipping into the unconscious, getting out of linear thinking, freeing up our intuitive, creative selves, and doing it from a really, really loving, wonderful, delicious place of safety, softness, and curiosity. So I am releasing a new Wild Dreaming session every single Friday of the entire summer, and we are going to some wild, wacky, weird, deep, archetypal places. I highly recommend joining me there. I've made it really affordable so that you can join me on that journey and I can keep doing my work. So highly recommend checking that out. Every time you comment or subscribe or like makes a huge difference in me being able to continue to do this work. And I really want to hear, how are you feeling? How do you connect to Cancer? What are some of the essential qualities of your soul and spirit that are arising at this time? I love reading your comments and connecting. As we share our stories so vulnerably, I think it helps all of us feel that deeper connection. So I will see you back here very soon. We have so much to talk about in the coming weeks, and I hope you have a beautiful new moon in Cancer.